about relationships and families for the New York Times. A few months ago, I started seeing this word pop up over and over again.
Men need to stop depending on women because it's causing this phrase called mankeeping. And this is because the male
A new feminist term just dropped. Have you ever heard of mankeeping? It's essentially a term that feminists came up with to define all emotional...
This recently published Guardian article unpacks the emerging concept of mankeeping, a dynamic in straight relationships where women are held responsible.
Mankeeping. It was showing up on TikTok, in news stories. Some of the people who were posting about it were really sort of joking about the idea of man-keeping. Some were really frustrated with it. And there were even a slew of articles claiming that this was ruining dating. You know, man-keeping was why a lot of women are opting out of dating. And I remember thinking, wait, what are we actually talking about here? So I really wanted to dig into whether this was just internet noise or whether there was something deeper going on here. Pretty quickly, I traced the term back to a researcher at Stanford who studies male friendship. Her name is Angelica Puzio Ferreira, and she came up with the term mankeeping to describe something that she has been seeing in her work, mostly in heterosexual relationships. So I called her up, and she explained that mankeeping is when women are acting as their partner's primary, and really sometimes their only, source of emotional support. Angelica told me that the women were also managing their partner's social lives, they're helping them navigate tough emotions, they might even be helping remind them to text their friends. I spoke to a woman named Eve Tilly Colson, who lives in Los Angeles. She's 38, she's an attorney, she's in a happy relationship with her boyfriend. And when she came across the term man-keeping online, she said it sort of felt like somebody had finally put words to something that she'd been feeling. She told me that she plans most of their social life. She brings up the big questions like when they'll meet each other's families or when they'll take a vacation. Sometimes she said it feels like she's the emotional engine of the whole relationship. Her boyfriend Glenn actually agreed. And then he had this gut reaction like, but is that bad? Since then, they've had a lot of conversations about balance and sharing the mental and emotional load. Eve told me that she has seen Glenn really step up, and Glenn told me that indeed now he really is trying to help plan and do some of that social and emotional work. Yes, this is a story about man-keeping, but really it's about the invisible labor that many women have carried in relationships, and it's also about the ways that a lot of men are struggling to find connection and support outside of their partners. Every expert I spoke to emphasized that this is not about blaming men. It's about the idea that no one person or partner can be someone's everything, and that building emotional support outside of your relationship actually makes it much stronger. When the piece came out, the response was really intense and pretty immediate. As soon as it was published, I started getting inundated with emails, and within hours, there were thousands of comments on the story itself. So clearly, it has tapped into a larger feeling that I'll be exploring more in the story that I'll read for you now. Justin Leoy is a licensed clinical social worker in Brooklyn who specializes in therapy for men. When he sees a new client, one of the first things he asks is, who can you talk to about what's going on in your life? Much of the time, Mr. Leoy said, his straight male clients tell him that they rarely open up to anyone but their girlfriends or wives. Their partners have become their unofficial therapists, he said, doing all the emotional labor. That particular role now has a name, man-keeping. The term, coined by Angelica Puzio Ferreira, a postdoctoral fellow at Stanford University, has taken off online. It describes the work women do to meet the social and emotional needs of the men in their lives, from supporting their partners through daily challenges and inner turmoil to encouraging them to meet up with their friends. What I have been seeing in my research is how women have been asked or expected to take on more work to be a central, if not the central piece of a man's social support system, Dr. Ferreira said, taking care to note that the dynamic isn't experienced by all couples. The concept has taken on a bit of a life of its own, with some articles going so far as to claim that man-keeping has ruined dating and driven women to celibacy. We talked to Dr. Ferreira and other experts about what man-keeping is and isn't, and how to tell if it has seeped into your relationship. Dr. Ferreira, who researches male friendship at Stanford's Clayman Institute for Gender Research, and Dylan Vergara, a research assistant, published a paper on man-keeping in 2024, after investigating why some men struggle to form close bonds, a growing and well-documented issue. In a 2021 survey, 15% of men said they didn't have any close friends, up from 3% in 1990. The same report showed that in 1990, nearly half of young men said that they would reach out to friends when facing a personal issue. 2 decades later, just over 20% said the same. Dr. Ferreira found that women tended to have all of these nodes of support they were going to for problems, whereas men were more likely to be going to just them, she said. She sees man-keeping as an important extension of the concept of kin-keeping, the work of keeping families together that researchers have found tends to fall disproportionately on women. Eve Tilly Colson, 37, was relieved to stumble upon the concept of man-keeping on social media. Ms. Tilly Colson, who lives in Los Angeles, is happy in her relationship with her boyfriend of nearly 7 months and described him as emotionally mature, funny, and caring. They make a good team, but Ms. Tilly Colson finds herself offering him a fair amount of social and emotional scaffolding, she said. They're both busy attorneys, but she tends to take charge of their social plans. Ms. Tilly Colson has hung out with her boyfriend's close friends a handful of times. He hangs out with hers several times a week. Her role as the de facto social director of the relationship includes more serious concerns, too. When are we going to meet each other's parents? When are we going to go on our first vacation together, she said. And if all of that onus is on me to kind of plan, then I also feel all of the responsibility if something goes wrong. Mankeeping put a word to her feelings of imbalance. I feel responsible for bringing the light to the relationship, she said. Her partner Glenn, 37, who agreed to speak to the New York Times but asked to use his first name only, said his gut reaction when his girlfriend first described mankeeping to him was that it seemed consistent with what he'd seen play out in many heterosexual relationships. He wondered, okay, but is that bad? We're in a moment where more women are speaking up about how drained they are by this dynamic, said Justin Perret, who runs a therapy practice in Seattle that focuses on relationships and men's issues. Miss Tilly Colson, who's also a content creator, even made a post on TikTok about it. Rather than viewing mankeeping as an internet-approved bit of therapy speak used to dump on straight men, experts said they see it as a term that can help sound the alarm about the need for men to invest emotionally in friendships. The reality is, no one person can meet all of another's emotional needs, said Tracy Dalglish, a psychologist and couples therapist based in Ottawa. Men need those outlets as well. Men need social connection. Men need to be vulnerable with other men. Mr. Perret said finding additional sources for emotional support does not require going from 0 to 60, adding that deepening friendships can happen in these smaller steps that are more manageable. He might encourage a client to share something new about himself with a friend he already has, for instance, or invite a friend he normally sees only in one context to do something new, a friendship-building concept sometimes referred to as repotting. If his male clients are reluctant to put themselves out there in that way, he tells them that developing relationships is not about replacing their romantic relationship, but strengthening it by widening the emotional foundation underneath your life by investing in friendships. But some of the challenges men face in making strong connections are societal, said Richard Reeves, president of the American Institute for Boys and Men, a think tank, and author of Boys and Men. Many of the institutions and spaces where men used to organically make friends have eroded, he said, like houses of worship, civic groups, and even the simple workplace. Men used to be able to put themselves in these institutional settings and it kind of happened around them, he added. That's not happening so much anymore. Men have to do more, be more assertive. I'm finding that even in my own life. For Ms. Tilly Colson and Glenn, talking about mankeeping explicitly has helped ease her burden. Glenn admitted that partly he thought his girlfriend just liked taking the reins socially. But when she explained how it felt to act as the default emotional manager in the relationship, he began to see how things could feel lopsided, he said, and added, I've put more effort in to try and even things out. This article was read by me, Katherine Pearson. The audio was produced by Sarah Diamond. Thank you for listening.